Our fifth and final module is about conversational AI. So in this module, we're going to look at some conversational AI concepts. We'll get an understanding of what we mean when we use that term, and then we'll look at some responsible AI guidelines specifically for building conversational solutions with bots. Then we'll take a look at how we actually implement a conversational AI solution in Microsoft Azure. And to do that, we're going to look really at two services. We're going to look at the Q&A Maker service, and we're going to look at the Azure Bot service. So first of all, let's look at some conversational AI concepts. So conversational AI is a term that we use for a workload that builds on other AI workloads, and in particular natural language processing, but potentially also machine learning and computer vision. And what this workload does is it manages a dialogue, it manages a conversation between typically an AI agent that we call a bot and a human. Now, people often associate the term bot with a chat interface on a website, but actually that's only one fairly common, but only one way to interact with a bot. There are lots of different ways that we can work with bots, and bots can be connected to multiple channels, including email, social media, telephone, and so on. Now, bots are used in multiple different scenarios. So a few examples that we might want to think about. Customer support is a good example. So if a company has frequently asked questions, or if we need to gather some troubleshooting information before handing off to a human customer service representative, then a bot is a good way to do that. Reservation systems are also a good scenario for bots. For example, you might have a reservation system for booking cinema tickets or flights or a table at a restaurant. And you could do that because it's a fairly standard type of conversation. There's some fairly standard bits of information you need to gather. A bot is a good way to do that. Now, digital assistants that you might have on your cell phone or in your home, or maybe even in your car, these kind of things are effectively behaving as bots. They're performing tasks based on instructions that you give, and they're able to engage you in a dialogue and answer questions. Online ordering is another common scenario. Maybe you can order from an online retailer, or maybe just order takeout food from a local delivery service. And again, a bot is a good way of capturing the information and ensuring that that order is placed. Increasingly, we're seeing bots used in scenarios like healthcare. So for example, if you have some symptoms, you might find that the first stage of getting a diagnosis is to go through an automated diagnosis system using a bot where you provide your symptoms and it will troubleshoot and narrow down what the problem might be to a number of different diagnoses. And then one final example might be office productivity. Maybe in an organization where you're using specific applications to perform business functions, you might find that bots are used to help users either work through those applications to complete the tasks, or maybe just to help you find corporate resources or help with a particular task. Now, regardless of the specific scenario where you're using a bot, there are some guidelines for making sure that your bot is responsible, that it behaves in a responsible manner. So there's a list of these guidelines here. Number one is to be transparent about what the bot can and can't do. Be very open about what this bot is specifically designed to accomplish and what's perhaps outside of its remit. So if it's a bot for ordering a pizza, then be very clear this bot can help you order a pizza. It doesn't do anything else. Make it clear that the user is actually communicating with a bot. Bots can be very sophisticated, and some of the natural language capabilities that we have now mean that a user might not realize that they're dealing with an AI agent rather than an actual human agent at the other end. So you really want to be transparent about that and be clear that this is a bot that you're working with. And the next stage after that is to enable your bot to seamlessly hand off to a human if necessary. So make it clear you're working with a bot, and if this bot can't achieve what you need to achieve, make it easier for the user to say, well, no, I'd like to speak to a human operator, or I'd like to hand off, and make sure that the bot has captured any information up to that point that's relevant and hands that information over to the human so that there's a seamless transition. Number 4 is about ensuring that the bot respects cultural norms. So making sure that you're respectful of the people who are using the bot, making sure that you identify situations where perhaps people enter something that's offensive and dealing with that, or making sure that the bot itself is not propagating anything that's offensive or that's demeaning to anyone. Number 5 is about reliability. We've got to make sure that this bot is actually reliable. If the bot says it's going to do something, then it should do it. It should be tested thoroughly to make sure that it works properly. It should respect user privacy. So if it's a bot that's taking in user information, then it should make sure that it respects that, it doesn't reveal that. And related to that, it should make sure that it handles data securely. So if the user is submitting some personal information, it should do so over a secure connection and make sure that that isn't available for a hacker to get a hold of. Make sure that the bot meets accessibility standards, so make sure that it's able to be used by anybody regardless of their physical abilities. And as always with AI, assume accountability for the bot's actions. Make it clear that you as the organization who have this bot out there are responsible for what that bot does and says when it's being used. But let's take a look at an example of using a bot. The example we're going to look at is the Microsoft Healthcare bot, which is available for developers to build healthcare solutions on. And what we'll do is we'll scroll down here, and there is an option to see an end-to-end example of the user experience. So let's take a look at that. And the bot shows up in this chat interface, and you can see that it introduces itself. Now it's very clear about what it is. This is a bot and what its purpose is. I exist for demo purposes only. So again, we're making sure that the bot is very clear about what it can and can't do. And if you think you are having a genuine medical emergency, call 911 or the number for your local emergency service. So this bot does not take the place of emergency healthcare. It's simply designed in this instance to be an example of a healthcare demo. And then it gives some examples of the sorts of things you can ask the bot. So very clear and transparent about how you can use this. And it gives you some examples. And I'm going to say, my foot hurts. Enter that. And the bot says, well, okay, I need to gather some information. What's your age? So I'll confide my age in here. And it asks for my gender. How much does it hurt? How bad is the pain? I'm going to say I've got a mild level of pain at the moment. When did it happen or start? How long has it been going on? And I'll say it's been for the past day or so. Now, do I feel like it's getting any better or worse? I'm going to say it's staying pretty much the same. Is it worse in the mornings? I'll say yes. So you can see we've got this guided kind of conversation. It's asking questions based on the responses I give. It's changing the questions it asks, and it gives me this user interface where I can enter these answers. And in this instance, it's a slightly more sophisticated user interface. It's giving me the option to choose different options. So I'm going to say there's a little bit of bruising. There doesn't appear to be a puncture wound or a splinter. And where is it? I'm going to say it's near the toes. Did I hurt or injure my foot? Well, I don't remember hurting or injuring my foot. Is there any redness or rash? Well, it's a little bit red. Was there an injury? And if yes, did the injury occur? Well, I don't recall there being an injury, so no. Do I have a fever? No. Do I have any of these medical conditions? Well, I don't believe so. Do I feel sick or unwell? Well, I feel a little bit sick or a little weak. I'm not necessarily facing a life-threatening problem at this stage. And I finally get to this conclusion. Suggested care, urgent care centre. Here are some possible causes, and it gives me some potential causes for what the pain is with the foot, and it gives me this suggested next action is to go to an urgent care centre and have it looked at. So as a bot, it's engaging me in a dialogue, it's asking me questions, and then based on my responses, it's responding back again, it's furthering the conversation. So that's when we say conversational AI, that's what we mean. It's a framework in this case for managing a conversation that guides me towards a solution. And in this case, we're very focused on diagnosing some of the symptoms for the pain in my foot and coming to a conclusion of what that might be causing that pain and what my next step should be. Well, let's take a look at what the services are in Azure that would help us build a bot solution. So the first thing we're going to look at is something called the Q&A Maker service. And as its name suggests, it's a service that enables you to define a knowledge base of questions and answers. So we create these Q&A pairs, and you can create that either by actually just entering questions with answers, or if you have an existing frequently asked questions list, something called an FAQ list, then you can import that and you can use that as the basis for your knowledge base. And then you can augment your questions and answers with some built-in chit-chat sources, as they're called, that have common conversational exchanges such as hello, goodbye, all that type of conversational thing. And after creating that knowledge base, you train a model based on the Q&As that you've got in your knowledge base, and you publish that model as a service. And client applications can then consume that knowledge base, particularly bots can then use that knowledge base as a way of responding appropriately to user input. Now, another service in Azure that's associated with conversational AI is the Azure Bot service. And that provides a platform for creating, deploying, and managing bots. With the Azure Bot service, a developer can use the Microsoft Bot Framework SDK, which is a set of resources for application developers, to develop the bots that they then can deploy and manage in Azure using the Azure Bot service. Now, using this, you can integrate your bot with other Azure cognitive services like Language Understanding or Q&A Maker, which we've just talked about. And you can connect your bot to multiple channels, such as web chat, email, Microsoft Teams, and all sorts of other channels as well. So that enables you to create a bot, have that running on Azure, and communicating with your users using whichever channel they prefer to work with. So the best way to learn about this is to go and build a simple bot yourself and see how it works. So in this lab, you're going to do exactly that. You're going to use the Q&A Maker to make a knowledge base, and then you're going to build a bot that uses that knowledge base to respond to user input. To complete this lab, we're going to reuse the Visual Studio Code space that we created earlier. So I'll just go and start mine up again. Once it's started, I'm just going to refresh so that it picks up the color theme change. And I'll close these panes that I'm not going to need. And I'm ready to start the lab. And the lab is the Q&A bot notebook, so we'll open that up. And we can just say OK on that little message that pops up. And there's some text to read through, and the first task that I'm going to perform is to create a Q&A Maker knowledge base. And to do that, I'm going to use this tool called the Q&A Maker AI portal. So we're going to open up that, and that will open in another tab in the browser. And I'll just sign into that using the same subscription. And I've signed in here. I don't currently have any knowledge bases, but I'm ready to go and create one. So I can go to this link at the top to create a knowledge base. And it says, well, the first thing you're going to need is a Q&A service in Microsoft Azure. If you don't already have one, you can create one here. If you do, you can skip this step. So we don't have one, so we'll go ahead and create a Q&A service. And that opens up the Azure portal and gets me to the wizard where I'm going to create a Q&A Maker service. I'll call mine Graham Q&A. I choose my subscription. The pricing tier, I'm going to choose F0. It's a free level that I can use just to try it out. And I could either create a new resource group, or I could use the resource group I've been using throughout this course. So I'll just put it in my Cognitive Services resource group. And the Q&A Maker is built on top of a service called Azure Search. So I need to choose a pricing tier for that. Again, I'm going to choose the F for free tier. And we can put that in the West US location. Doesn't really matter in this case, but that will do for me. And I need to create an app for my Q&A service. It's going to be published as an Azure app, and that will automatically be whatever I put in here, .azurewebsites.net. That will be the full address of that. And I get a little tick here to say that that default name is not already taken, so I can use that. So we can go ahead and use that. Now that will in turn be hosted in a website, so we need a website location. And I could use something called Azure App Insights to track telemetry as people use the app and get information from that. In this case, I'm just going to disable that. We don't need that for this simple example. And we'll go ahead and create that Q&A maker service. And once that deploys, I could actually go to that resource and I can see that it's in here and it's got the keys and endpoint that I would normally expect for any of these cognitive services resources. But all I'm going to do with this is I'm going to go back to the Q&A maker portal, and having now created my Q&A service, I'll just refresh this page, and then I can choose my Azure directory, the subscription, the service that I just created, and the language that I want to use for my Q&A service. So now I'm ready to go and create a knowledge base, and we're going to base our knowledge base on a fictitious travel company called Margie's Travel. So I'll call it Margie's Q&A. And I can populate my knowledge base, and I can populate it either by entering some data myself, or by pointing at a URL or uploading a file that already contains my frequently asked questions. Now I actually have a URL, and you'll find it in the lab instructions if we scroll down here. It's a big long URL, so I'm just going to copy that to the clipboard. And then we'll paste that in here. So that's where we're going to go and grab that FAQ from. We'll add that URL. And I'm also going to get it to use some built-in chit chat. So we'll pre-populate it with some chit chat questions and answers as well. And then we're ready to go and create our knowledge base. And the knowledge base is loaded with the Q&As that came from my FAQ document. So I can see some Margie's Travels questions and answers here, and also some responses from the chit chat resource here. So I can see some default sort of questions that people typically ask when they're trying to play around with a bot, and we get back the appropriate response. And I can add more questions and answers to that. So I could add a Q&A pair. And in this case, I'll add a very simple exchange, not actually a question in this case, but I'll say if somebody says hello, or potentially as an alternative phrasing, hi, then the appropriate response is to say hello back again. So I can go and enter that as the response. So I could add as many of these additional Q&As as I need, but you can see that I've got a few in here. So now I've got a populated knowledge base with 99 Q&A pairs, and I'm ready to go and save and train a model based on that. So we'll save that and train. And once that's been saved and trained, I can test it out in here, get a little user interface to do that with. So I could enter a message into here, hello. And I get back the appropriate response, hello. So we've got something happening now. It's giving us responses. And now we're ready to go and publish this. So we'll just hide the test environment, and we'll go ahead and publish our service. Now publishing this moves the Q&As from the test index to production index. So we're ready to actually use it by a bot or an app. So we'll go ahead and publish. And that goes off and publishes my Q&A service. So I've now got that knowledge base available. I've got a model that is built off that knowledge base available for me to use. And I get some information here that as a developer I could use to build my own application, but I also get the option to create a bot using the Azure portal. So we'll just go ahead and click Create Bot. And that takes me back to the Azure portal again. And the bot needs a name or a handle, so I could choose an appropriate bot. And in this case, we've got Graham Q&A bot, which seems to be fine. So we'll go ahead and use that. We have the subscription and the resource group where we're going to deploy it, a location where we want to deploy this bot, a pricing tier for the bots, and we'll just use the F0 pricing tier in this case. The app name for the bot, we're going to publish an application. Now we can choose the language that we want to develop this bot in. It's going to be either C# or Node.js. We're going to leave it in C# just now. It doesn't actually matter. We're not going to write any code. And it's going to have an authorization key already created for it. We'll turn application insights off for this one. And we will automatically create an app ID and password for this bot. So all of that has been filled in for us when we click that link from the Q&A maker. So we'll just go ahead and click Create. And that goes and deploys my bot. And when the bot is deployed, we can go to the resource that's been created. And in here, there is a test in web chat interface. So the first thing I'm going to do is just test and make sure that the bot is actually working. And we get a bot interface appearing. If I just leave it for a second or two, I'll get an initialization message. Hello and welcome appears from the bot. And then I can test it by typing in a message. And I get back the appropriate response for that. So I seem to have a working bot. It's built on top of my knowledge base. So the hello and welcome is hard-coded into the bot. That's how it initializes the conversation. And then from then on, whenever I type in a message, it uses my knowledge base that I created to get the appropriate response. And what I might want to do with this bot is connect it to different channels so that users can connect to it and ask questions and get responses. So for example, if I have a look at the channels tab here, I can see that it's already connected to the web chat channel, and there are some additional channels down here that I could connect it to make it work across all of these different communication mediums. But I'm going to work with the web chat channel here, and I'm just going to click Edit to view the settings for that. And what I need from here is I have some secret keys that are used to connect to this bot. It's just really to authenticate against it. And I get some code here that I could use in a web page just to create the appropriate interface. So I'm going to copy that code. And then I'll go back to the lab that I was working in, this lab file. And we've actually completed all of these various tasks down here. What I am going to do is down in this cell here, I'm going to paste that code that I just copied. So we'll take that embed code and we'll paste that in. And that is going to create an instance of the bot that is going to be in this space for me to work with. But the first thing I need is my secret key. That secret key needs to go there. So we'll go and get that key. Here is the secret key. So if I show that, I can just go and copy that to the clipboard. I'll paste it here, replacing your secret here. And then the other change I'm going to make is the minimum height is currently 500, which is a little bit big for this space that I'm working in. So I'm just going to change that to 200. And we can go ahead and run that cell. And so that's created my bot interface. This is what I would have in a web page if I were working with this bot. And I can type in a message. I could say hello. And it initializes the bot, so I get the hello and welcome initialization message and then the appropriate response. And then because I'm working with a travel agent, I might want to cancel a hotel, for example. So I might say, how can I cancel a hotel? And I get back a message that says you can cancel a flight or hotel anytime up to 24 hours before check-in. So it's getting that from my Q&A maker knowledge base. It's an appropriate response to the question I asked, and it's engaging me in a conversation. So in this module, we took a look at some conversational AI concepts. We talked about what is conversational AI, and really what we're talking about there is building applications using bots to manage a conversation or a dialogue with the user. And then we talked about building conversational AI solutions in Azure. So we talked about the Q&A maker service and the Azure bot service. And then in the lab, you used both of those services to build a simple bot that can answer questions. Now, the lab is based on a Microsoft Learn module, and you can find out more about building bots by exploring that Learn module. So let's take a look at that. And here is that learning path, and the module is build a bot with Q&A maker and Azure bot service. You've already completed the exercise here, but there is an introduction and a get started with Q&A maker topic that's worth looking at, and there are some review questions on the summary page that you should perhaps use to test your knowledge.